You're listening to the Real Returns podcast, where we learn how real investments can make a real impact. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they share stories and interview business leaders on how real estate and other forms of investment can create meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
Hi, this is Andrew Reichert, and welcome back to another episode of the Real Returns podcast. Here we actually talk about investing in real estate and the impact that it can have on the world around us. And I'm super excited for our guest today. His name is James Brown, and he's been doing some really interesting things, particularly in some alternatives to what you might think of as traditional real estate investing. So with that, James, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, great to be on the show with you. I'm the co-founder of Real Home Solutions, and we basically match up people that can't get financing that want to buy a home with investors and put deals together and make it a win-win in many respects. There's a lot of people involved, so that's kind of the high level of what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is, kind of approaching it particularly with the lease to own strategy. It's something that I feel like is an area of the industry that's not talked about that much. So can you talk about that strategy and maybe talk about how it relates or is different from other strategies out there?
Oh boy. Yeah, we could dive deep into this. Yeah, it's a strategy that's been around for a long time, and it's actually been given a bad name in some instances by companies or people that either do it intentionally or unintentionally. So, I'm here to make it a win for everybody and give it a good name, at least through our company. So
yeah,
if that answers your question.
It does. Yeah. Why do you think it's gotten a bad name? What's happened in the industry?
Well, with lease options, you've got a lease with an option to buy, and usually there's some money the end buyer, the tenant buyer, pays up front, and it's usually non-refundable. And so there's different reasons why they might not exercise their option. If it comes down to them not being able to get financing, that's a problem. and what we're doing different is getting with a lender, really digging into the reason why they can't get financing now and what they need to do to get financing. And then we discover also through that process how long it's going to take. So we want to give that buyer enough time and the resources to be able to get financing through a bank, because we're helping people that can't get financing through a bank at the moment, right? So,
and what are some of the typical barriers that you're finding? Is it like credit score or credit worthiness in some way?
Yeah, and credit can be, there's all sorts of reasons why somebody's credit could be too low. So we dig into that. Ideally, it's something that can be fixed. We want to find out what caused it to be thrown off. So, people go through divorce, there's deaths in families, COVID hits, like things like that happen to somebody. Life happens. And as long as it's a fixable thing, that's kind of what we're looking for on the credit side. And then a good fit, at least for our programs, just somebody that needs time. A lot of self-employed people write off too much on their taxes, don't claim enough, and they need to flip the switch on that and actually claim the income they're bringing in. Or they need 2 years, typically with most lenders, if they're self-employed. So if they just need time, that's ideal. There's no complexity of fixing credit or whatever. So
yeah, what's the typical timeline that it takes to get somebody that may have been struggling to be a homeowner to be actually able to buy a home?
1 to 3 years is pretty typical, and most people need at least a year of time, or some credit help. Maybe it's going to take some time to get over that hump. And I know in Texas, they actually have a limit of 3 years for lease options. So, and I suspect the reason behind that is that if you give somebody too much time, they might just drag their feet, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, 4 years, 5 years went by and I didn't do anything because they thought they had enough time. They did, but maybe they just weren't keeping their eye on it.
So tell me more about how it works. Are these typically single family homes?
Yeah.
And are you actually the person that's putting in place the lease option do you own the single family home and you're putting in place the lease option?
So we match up an investor, a single investor, currently with our current model. And going forward, we'll do something similar. But yeah, so we just match that person up that can't get financing with an investor that can. And the investor buys the house and leases it to them like a regular rental, except they've got somebody that has an owner's mindset and wants to buy that house. So,
okay, and that's a single investor in each deal, so single tenant, single investor.
Yeah, we're looking at doing a fund, but as you know, like that's an additional level of complexity and paperwork and all that. So, I know it's like some of our competitors, they have huge funds behind them, which gives them some more flexibility, but this is how we do it.
Yeah. And how many of these have you done? Like how many total, single family homes have you worked with the tenants and the investors?
Yeah, I've done a couple dozen over the last 3 years. And my partner in Minnesota, he's been doing it for a decade, hundreds of them. So got a lot of experience to rely on with him. Yeah. His name is Jesse Mills, fantastic guy. He's got his own show as well. Yeah, he's in Minnesota. So we've done a lot of joint venture deals with him as well. Yeah, in the Midwest. Because I'm based in Colorado. We can do deals anywhere. And most of ours have been outside Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what percentage of folks end up actually buying the house from your experience? If you do 100 of these, how many folks are buying the house?
Yeah. I know, like, looking back, like, for Jesse's track record and ours, it's well over 85%.
Wow.
Close to 100, which is the opposite of, from what I've heard, the industry average. That's way low. So we're looking to change that,
Yeah. And just so I'm like clear on what you're seeing in the industry, you mentioned that people are paying an option payment. So are you finding that there's a perception or maybe even a reality that many landlords are putting these structures in place, but with no intention of ever actually selling to the tenant? They really just want to pocket that option payment?
That's true, yeah. And, there's different programs. Some, like one of our competitors, it's a real low amount, like a security deposit on a rental, right? And so those buyers aren't that committed, but they can get out easily. But then that company has, had a tenant with an owner's mindset for a year or two or however long they stay. So it's a way for them to kind of fund and build a rental portfolio. So that's not our goal. We want to make sure they buy. And, we ask for more down than that. So like if we're getting 10% paid up front, that's some serious skin in the game, and we don't want them to walk away from that. That's not good for anybody. I mean, it's good for the investor, but there's going to be some whining there. So we don't want to be in that situation. That's why we start out by getting with the lender and getting everybody on the same page. Like, here's the game plan going forward. This is what we need to do to make it happen.
Yeah. You mentioned 10%. Is that 10% of the
purchase
house
price
value? Purchase price? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they would put that 10% down, and then does that as a deposit for the lease option, and then does that become part of their down payment for when they do purchase?
Yeah. So it's a non-refundable lease option fee, and then the lender and that buyer can kind of decide how to allocate that. I like that 10% because that should give them plenty for, a 3.5% or 5% down payment, FHA loan as an example, and closing costs and a little extra. So it's just sitting there. They don't have to be saving up over time in addition to their monthly payment to be able to have that ready. So they basically prepaid that
Yeah. So at that point, they've basically already paid the down payment for the purchase. It's really just a question of credit worthiness to get the loan from the bank.
Yeah, exactly. Credit or time on the job or whatever they need.
And do you have certain banks that you work with that are used to working through these kinds of situations?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, any bank's fine, as long as they can get approved. Sometimes I have to kind of explain what we're doing and find a lender that's willing to, work with us up front to get documentation and really figure out what their game plan is. I have had lenders say, oh, we don't want to talk to you. We only want to talk to the buyer. And they don't want to spend any time getting docs. I'm like, well, that's your loss. Next, we go to the next lender that's willing to help these people. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to kind of pair the right lender, to the right sort of borrower and the appetite and the investor. You're sort of like connecting all the parties to make it work.
Yeah, like we've got a deal in Florida with an ITIN buyer. They don't have a social security number, and one member of the family is pretty good bilingual, but most of them only speak Spanish, and so having a lender that also speaks Spanish is super helpful. So in that case, not every lender is probably a good fit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you guys get paid in the transactions? Is it like a percentage of the deal for putting it together? Or how does that work?
Yeah. Percentage of the option consideration get back. And then also there's real estate commissions on the buy side when we buy it, because we're just buying off the MLS typically. If we can find a tenant buyer and a property that's off market at the same time that matches, we can do that too. So we've done that, but yeah.
And you're, go ahead.
Just depending on where the lead came from, who's involved, it's can be many slices of the pie. So just try to find a good balance so everybody's happy.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you're in Colorado, right?
I am, yeah.
Is that where most of the properties are that you guys are doing right now?
No, most of ours have been out of state, Midwest, and like Florida is an example. We've done a few here in Colorado too. So.
Okay. What's your temperature on the real estate market right now, just with, questions around recession and inflation and interest rates? What are you thinking about in terms of the market?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there. When we're looking at a deal specifically, we're always looking at where the market's going, because, there's a set purchase price, agreed upon purchase price in the beginning, where they can buy in a year or two or three. So we have to kind of look at the market and see what it's doing. A year ago, it was going up 18% every year in Colorado. And, we were doing deals where it was like around 6%, which is our average, year over year over the last 50 years. So the buyers could be walking into a lot of equity if it kept going. But also, if the market started dropping like it has been, they're still good,
Okay.
So we'll look at it every market. Like Colorado's market and appreciation can be vastly different than like Tennessee or something, So we have to look at each market and the current market. So.
Yeah, I've got to imagine that's challenging. You almost have to predict what valuations are going to be years into the future. How do you do that? I mean, without a crystal ball, how are you doing that?
It's just, a guess based on what we know now, and trends. So, everybody's got to agree to it. So we just kind of use the data we've got at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Wish we had a crystal ball.
Yeah, I know. You and me both. Cool. How about, let's talk about the investor side of things. How do you think about impact with investors? How have they been viewing the returns and, kind of the profile of what you've been doing?
Yeah. The returns are really good with this model, compared to regular rentals. a big difference is you've got somebody that's got skin in the game, especially if they're putting down 10% or more. They've picked out the house. They've got an owner's mindset. We ask them to take care of, like some of the basic repairs. So as an investor, you've got somebody that has a vested interest in the house and isn't likely to do anything, punch holes in the wall or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're more likely to fix up the house because it's theirs or going to be theirs.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about property management.
Yeah,
Even
nice.
if you wanted to, you could probably get a break on property management because the property managers realize, we don't have to be on top of this like a regular rental. Yeah, and the returns are, what's cool is what your numbers are going to be before you even close on the house.
Yeah.
You know what your cash flow is going to be. You know what your back end payday will be if they buy. So the returns are good. We look at apartment syndications as a comparison. I'm very familiar with those too. And you can come in as a passive investor on a deal like that and, get a preferred return of like 8% and maybe an upside when selling. It's nice and it's pretty comfortable, but we typically get quite a bit better returns. So
Okay.
I like both models, and an investor might want to do some of both, right? Kind of spread out.
Yeah. Are you able to share like what have your historical internal rate of return been for your investments?
Yeah, I mean, 20% would be like kind of on the low end, and most of them. We're looking at a deal right now. It's around 50, which that's pretty good. They're putting down like 20%. So cash in for the investor basically is zero if they got a 20% down loan. It's a higher risk one. Like they're with the tenant buyer, just they've had some issues in the past. So we're always kind of looking at their situation, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And every deal's different, really. I'm always trying to find a good balance for the buyer and the investor, so everybody's happy,
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And how scalable would you say the model is? If you're doing a few of these kind of ones and twosies, but it sounds like there's some people in the market that have a lot of financial backing behind them. Are those returns scalable, or is it like once you get a lot of capital, is it harder to find hundreds of these deals at a time, or are they out there?
They're out there. Yeah. My challenge is finding a good tenant buyer, that's got a significant amount of money to pay up front. There's plenty of people that have bad credit, bad job history is not good. They don't have much money. Plenty of those, and that's kind of where it's like, I think the industry's been given a bad name by just go ahead and take them, get them in a house, and then things go wonky. So I'd rather be a little more choosy, not do as many deals. But yeah, as far as scalability, we've got a network of people like myself in each market that's growing, that we teach them how to do what we're doing. So the bigger that network is, the more opportunity we have to be sharing deals. So like somebody might have a good tenant buyer, somebody might have an investor ready to go that's in a different market. So it's kind of cool. We can put the puzzle pieces together. So that's what's exciting about like the growth we're having is bringing on people that want to do this and put the deals together. So we've got a good program for teaching them and getting them off the ground and building up some systems, cohesive systems where we can just kind of plug somebody in and let them go crazy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
On the tenant buyer side, any particular story stand out to you where it's like, hey, this was one really impactful situation, we really changed this person's life? Have you had any of those that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah. I mean, almost all of them, there's a cool story behind it. Like the one that we're doing in Florida, that's a family from Honduras, Spanish-speaking I-10 buyers. And, they would have had to wait quite a long time. And we got them in a house. And actually, I just got a call the other day. They're about to be able to buy. And one of the sisters is like, hey, I want to do this too. So we're going to, she's talking to a lender. We're going to try to get them in house as well. And the other cool thing is, like, the investor had not done any real estate investing. He's got a family, got a good job, is like a programmer, doesn't have the time to figure out how to put a deal together. And so he's the investor on this deal. So we just kind of put it together and making his money. And when they buy, he'll be ready for another one. Just kind of rinse and repeat, and maybe he'll do this other one with the sister. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Very, very cool. I love how you think of impact on both sides of the equation.
Perhaps.
You're trying to support the investor and drive a good return for them, and like they're busy computer programmer, they're not, you're stewarding their capital well, and yet you're also having this huge impact on the tenant side where you're able to improve their life in a meaningful way compared to not being able to actually purchase the home. So
yeah,
I love the way you think of it kind of both ways.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like I've got a really good sense for the work that you're doing. I think you're doing great work. Let's get to know you personally a little bit. So we like to do kind of this lightning round. So for starters, why don't you share with the listeners, what's your biggest win?
I think my biggest win, well, it may be just another story about, it was our first deal. Jesse in Minnesota had another real estate agent that didn't have a full 2 years as an agent and wanted to buy a house. He picked out a duplex, and we brought our investor from Colorado, similar kind of investor, computer programmer, has money, family, wanted to get started on investing. And so he bought the duplex. The agent lived in one side, rented out the other. And within, I think it was like a year and a half, he was able to buy that. And then at the same time, his new wife, and he bought a single family home and to live in. And then they turned that duplex into, 2 doors, 2 rentals, all within a year and a half. And because he had gone through the program and was an agent, now he helps Jesse screen tenant buyers and help them through the process because he's been through it. So that's a really cool story. How everybody won. And yeah.
And that was your first deal.
That was our first deal.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You always remember the first one, huh?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've had some tricky ones too, but yeah.
Awesome. How about your favorite movie?
I like comedies, and one of my favorites is Walk Hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen that one?
I haven't. No.
Oh,
Is it good?
Yeah. It's so good.
Okay.
Yeah. John C. Reilly.
Okay.
Will Ferrell. Yeah. It's so good.
All right. I'm putting it on my list. How about favorite food? What kind of food do you like?
I like my mom's spaghetti, homemade spaghetti. So I grew up in Alaska, and so we would hunt for caribou. It wasn't our main source of food, but we'd go hunt for caribou, and then my mom would take the hamburger and make spaghetti out of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Caribou. I don't think I've ever had that. Is it good?
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
It's been years since I've had it. Like, I've been in Colorado since '88. I've had some caribou sausage, but yeah, haven't had actual caribou hamburger spaghetti in a long time.
I'll have to put that on my list too. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, go to Alaska. Go check it out.
Yeah, seriously. I haven't been.
Yeah.
I would be excited to. How about like a current growth edge? What's an area where you're trying to grow personally or professionally, sort of as a person?
Yeah, mindset is so huge. Like, just as a general overarching thing, like, I didn't realize real estate investing is not easy. And so you have to have a solid mindset and be persistent. And so that's a huge thing for me. besides, I mean, I could name other things like having awesome partners that are have different skill sets and, are also driven. That's huge. And then systems. That's one thing. And staying focused. I mean, I can't pick just one thing because there's so many things that go into success, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great advice for the listeners for sure. What do you do on the mindset front? Like, is it a meditation or affirmations or any of that stuff?
Yeah, I have the Waking Up app, the Sam Harris's Waking Up app. That's good. It's kind of gotten me on a path. I don't meditate daily, but the mindfulness and awareness has kind of sunk in, so that's important. And then I like the Daily Stoic. I've got that book, Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic, and then I follow him on Instagram as well. So it's good to just constantly get reminders like that.
Yeah, believe it or not, you're not the first person on the show to mention that one.
Right.
That's interesting.
I've listened to a lot of shows that had guests on my show that mentioned that. So I was like, I guess I got to check this out. And it's awesome.
Very cool. All right. If folks want to connect to you, obviously you have a podcast. What's a good way for folks to follow the work that you're doing?
I mean, if they want to look into the investing model, they can go to hybridinvestor.vip and watch our overview video and reach out. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. They can also check out my show, if I can plug that. It's called This Month in Real Estate Investing.com. Just go there and you can watch past shows. And we record that once a month and have 3 guests on. We dissect the news of the month. So that's another good way to see what I'm doing and seeing who I'm talking to. So, and figure out,
Cool. That's great, James. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks to our listeners for listening in. I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed just hearing about a new aspect of real estate investing that I routinely haven't thought about. And I'm guessing most of our guests haven't thought about. So it's interesting to hear, there's many ways that people are investing in real estate. And this is one where I can just tell has a real impact on the people's lives that it intersects with. I mean, these people that are looking to buy a house and the work and the empathy that your organization is doing to get them into a home is really just incredible. So thanks so much, James, for your time. And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Returns Podcast. We hope that you learned something new about how you can invest to make a lasting impact on those around you. Please be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave us a review, and share about us on social media. We hope you will join us for our next episode, where we will be continuing the conversation around impactful real estate investing.